It's been a turbulent few years for Conor McGregor. From triumphant knockouts in the UFC to high-profile legal controversies and shocking injuries, the Irishman has lived a life that swings wildly between glamour and chaos. But even by his own dramatic standards, the recent events surrounding his beloved Dublin pub, the Black Forge Inn, have rattled him in ways that no octagon opponent ever could. And when former UFC champion Daniel Cormier, DC to fight fans, chimed in with a sharp critique, the situation boiled over into something much bigger than a local act of arson. Twice now, criminals have targeted the Black Forge Inn in what authorities are calling coordinated and malicious attacks. The first arson attempt came under cover of darkness, with 2 petrol bombs thrown at the entrance of the establishment in a manner that sent shockwaves through the local community. Miraculously, no injuries were reported. Security footage revealed 2 hooded figures sprinting away into the night. While no arrests were immediately made, Gardaí opened an investigation into what they classified as attempted criminal damage by means of fire. McGregor, who was not on site at the time, responded on social media within hours, and his reaction was anything but composed. "They think they can intimidate me? Burn my business. You're lighting fires in hell. Cowards," McGregor posted on X, formerly Twitter. The message was accompanied by a grainy clip of the fire incident, followed by another post with a selfie of McGregor at the charred remains of the pub's doorway, promising, "This place will rise again, stronger, better, bigger." But just as the flames of the first attack were doused and repairs began, a second strike came less than 2 weeks later. This time, the attackers seemed more emboldened. Another set of devices, more flammable than before, were hurled directly at the newly replaced entrance. The fire spread faster, causing extensive damage to the pub's kitchen area and forcing nearby residents to evacuate their homes temporarily due to smoke inhalation risks. The fire department arrived in time to prevent a full structural collapse, but the message had been sent loud and clear. Someone had declared war on McGregor's empire. To outsiders, this looked like a random act of criminal mischief. But locals began speculating that there was more at play, whispers of gang-related intimidation, vendettas, or perhaps fallout from McGregor's complicated history in the area. The former UFC champion has long been a polarizing figure in Ireland, celebrated by many for his success, but criticized by others for flaunting wealth, feuding publicly, and brushing up against the law. With these arsons, those simmering tensions came to a boil. McGregor's response to the second attack was even more defiant. "You burn it down, I rebuild it. You try to break me, I come back richer," he wrote. This time, he followed the post with a photo of himself pouring concrete at the site. "I'm the Phoenix of Crumlin," he added, referencing the Dublin suburb where he was born and where the pub is located. But just as support poured in from fans around the world, so too did criticism, most notably from Daniel Cormier. DC, known for his broadcasting work with the UFC and his own no-nonsense attitude, took to his podcast to share some hard-hitting thoughts. While he condemned the arson attacks unequivocally, he also questioned whether McGregor was drawing negative attention to himself and his businesses through his lifestyle. "You can't throw gasoline on every bridge you cross and then act surprised when something burns down behind you," DC said. "I'm not saying he deserved it. No one does. But let's be real. When you constantly put yourself in the middle of chaos, eventually the chaos comes home." The comments spread like wildfire. UFC fans split into factions online. Some praised Cormier for calling it like it is, holding McGregor accountable for years of reckless behavior. Others blasted DC for what they saw as victim blaming. "You don't kick a man when his pub is on fire," one user commented. DC need to stick to calling fights, not moral judgments. McGregor didn't take long to respond. Within hours, he fired back on social media, tagging Cormier directly. "At DC_MMA, you fat fool. I built everything I have from scratch. You think I asked for this? You think I'd burn my own place? Go drink another soda and stay in your lane." The post was classic McGregor, laced with venom, ego, and a dose of theatrical flair. Cormier doubled down, refusing to back off. "I never said you burned your own place, champ," he replied on air. "I said your lifestyle invites this. There's a difference. You run around flashing stacks of cash, hanging with sketchy people, getting into fights at bars. Don't act shocked when it all catches up. With that, a verbal war was officially underway, not just between two retired UFC fighters, but between two fundamentally different philosophies. On one side, McGregor, who built a brand on bravado, wealth, and unapologetic extravagance. On the other, Cormier, the self-proclaimed blue-collar champion, who emphasized discipline, humility, and responsibility. The attacks on the Black Forge struck a nerve with the Irish public. Some began questioning the police's inability to prevent the second fire despite surveillance and increased patrols. Others debated whether McGregor, for all his fame, was becoming a liability to his own community. The pub itself had become a popular local hangout, not just for McGregor's fans, but for locals who appreciated the investment in their neighborhood. For many, the fires weren't just attacks on McGregor. There were attacks on the idea that success born from the community could remain rooted in the community. Meanwhile, McGregor escalated his security team. Reports indicated he had hired several ex-military contractors to monitor not just the pub but also his private residences. He was spotted flanked by guards wearing tactical gear, a far cry from the flamboyant, solo strolls he used to take down Grafton Street. He even hinted in an interview that he had a list of people he suspected were behind the attacks. "I know the rats. They know I know them too," he said ominously during a segment on his social platform, McGregor Fast. "You throw fire, I throw fists." It's not just about the pub anymore. It's about sending a message. UFC President Dana White was asked about the situation during a media scrum following UFC 313. "Look, it's messed up. Nobody deserves to have their property destroyed. I don't care if you love or hate Conor. That's criminal behavior. That said, I hope he keeps his cool. We've seen Conor lose it before, and I just hope he doesn't go vigilante." White's concern was well-founded. McGregor has a history of impulsive decisions, from throwing a dolly through a bus window to punching a bar patron over a whiskey dispute. But in this case, even his most ardent critics were beginning to sympathize. At what point does public persona become a magnet for violence? And how does someone as famous and as infamous as Conor McGregor live a normal life when enemies lurk in the shadows? The debate spilled into the MMA media ecosystem. Ariel Helwani dedicated a full hour of his show to unpacking the situation. "This is about more than firebombs," he said. "It's about whether McGregor's empire can hold under the pressure of being constantly attacked, literally and metaphorically." Social psychologists weighed in too. Several experts suggested that celebrities like McGregor live in a paradox, admired and envied in equal measure. Their success becomes a symbol of aspiration for some, of resentment for others. In McGregor's case, his flamboyant wealth, controversial antics, and history of courtroom run-ins made him an especially volatile symbol. But amid all the media frenzy, McGregor remained undeterred. He doubled down on rebuilding the Black Forge Inn, posting mid-daily updates on its reconstruction. He even announced plans to open a second pub, this one even bigger, in another part of Dublin. "They tried to smoke me out," he posted. "Now I'm building fireproof." And yet, beneath the bravado, even his most loyal followers noticed a shift. McGregor looked older, not just physically, but emotionally. His tone had changed slightly. There was more steel, less flash. As if the fires had burned away not just parts of his business, but a layer of his identity. He began referencing legacy more often, not just in terms of his UFC titles or his record-breaking pay-per-view numbers, but his legacy as a man. "When my kids grow up, they won't just hear about the knockouts or the Bentleys," he said. "They'll hear that I stood my ground, that I fought even when the cage was gone." As for DC, he didn't waver. In later interviews, he acknowledged the seriousness of the attacks and praised McGregor's resilience. But he stuck to his message: you can't live in the storm forever and be surprised when lightning strikes. Still, a curious thing happened. The back and forth between McGregor and DC, though heated, never reached the level of personal insult that their past clashes had. It was as if both men, now older and retired from active fighting, understood something deeper. That the world outside the octagon is more dangerous. That fight doesn't care about belts. and that sometimes two rivals can be on opposite sides of a feud but still share the same fear of what comes when the lights go out and the cameras stop rolling. Whether or not the Black Forge rises again, and all signs say it will, the legacy of the attacks has already etched itself into McGregor's story. No longer just the brash fighter from Dublin who took on the world, he now carries the scars of being targeted at home, of building in a place where not everyone is cheering. But if Conor McGregor is anything, it's persistent. Bruised, burned, maybe even broken, but never beaten.